Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of this F1 25 Joshua Pearce career mode. This is part 7 of the series and we'll be taking on the Emilia Grand Prix this episode. If you did miss the last one though, Max Verstappen took victory in Miami over Lando Norris to extend his championship lead, and Hamilton also was up on the podium as well. It was just not a great weekend overall for ourselves. We ended up getting damage in both races, the sprint and the Grand Prix, and ended up having the wrong setup as well for the Grand Prix, which just made things even worse for ourselves, and we've just got to have a look at it to try and improve for following episodes and following races, and just try and future-proof ourselves from making the same mistakes. Going into this race weekend, Max Verstappen leads the Drivers' Championship by 25 points to Lando Norris. Then it's Oscar Piastri in third, 43 points behind. Myself in 8th, 5 points behind Yuki Tsunoda. And Hayes, our teammate, is in 14th, 3 points behind Fernando Alonso. And Red Bull lead the Constructors' Championship by 2 points to McLaren. Then it's Ferrari in third, 57 points behind APXGP. We find ourselves 6th position, 4 points behind the Alpine. And we're going to jump straight into some upgrades here. So looking in the chassis department, a minor tyre wear upgrade by getting a new roll damper, which at the standard development will come in before Spain, or at a much higher failure rate before this weekend. Standard development to make sure this one is here for Spain. And into the aerodynamics, major drag reduction upgrade by getting a new front wing gurney flap. And this time we do have a different time frame for this one, since it is a major upgrade, and that's a standard development after Spain or a rushed after Imola. So going to still have to play it safe for this one, since it is a major upgrade. Want to make sure it is on the car. And heaps of upgrades that have been in the works for a bit, which include a new front wing flat profile, beam wing, and got a new positioning for the energy store cells, which will hopefully improve the balance of the car. And they're all going to be on for this weekend. Unfortunately, a few didn't make it onto the car for the weekend, so we will have to be looking for those into the future rounds. Well, it's looking quite overcast for the weekend with a small threat of rain, and after the last episode in Miami, definitely looking for a break from the wet weather, so hopefully it stays dry for ourselves. And there have been some massive changes in the performance charts. Red Bull have now closed the gap to McLaren and are now pretty much on identical performance, as Mercedes are also closing the gap to Ferrari. But the big news is APXGP. We have jumped up to the best of the rest position. Well, that's on paper, so depending how we go in Imola will be the determining factor whether if we actually are the best of the rest. Behind us though, it is still very close between the remaining teams, with Sauber bringing up the rear of the grid as we jump straight to qualifying.
Welcome along everybody to Imola, just down the road from Ferrari HQ, and they know a thing or two about pace, and pace today is king. It's qualifying day, and it's great to have you with us.
Very excited for this qualifying session, as it will be our first qualifying and first time giving the car some proper pace with all of these new upgrades. It was quite wet in practice, so this is going to be pretty much our first dry running of the weekend, and we'll cross the line to finish our first flying lap here in P9, 8/10 of a second down though from in P6. So we've got quite a bit of time to find, and time we find on our next flying lap, 7/10 of an improvement, but it is still only P15, so we are really struggling here to try and get ourselves acclimatized here to the dry conditions of the Imola circuit here. And our next flying lap on a brand new set of tyres does put us up into P7, and as the checkered flag drops, it's going to be Yuki Tsunoda fastest in qualifying one by 3/10 of a second to Lando Norris. Then it's George Russell in third, half a second behind. Our teammate Sonny Hayes finds himself in 7th, only a second behind, and myself ended up P9, so dropping a few positions behind, 1.2 seconds behind, and knocked out in qualifying one is Kimi Antonelli at his home Grand Prix by a very, very small margin. Nico Hulkenberg, Esteban Ocon, Oliver Behrman, Lance Stroll, and Jack Doohan, and it's a massive spread of times in the first part of qualifying, well and truly over 2 seconds as we go for a spin and hit to one of the styrofoam boards at the exit there. And those tyres are definitely now cooked. It was a little bit of a scruffy start to that lap, as they were the used tyres, but now we go out on some fresh rubber and we can only go P11. So this will be it. This is our last set of tyres. This is our second lap on this set of tyres, and you can see that the improvement is not there. It's only 0.03 of a second. We remain P11, and I've got no more tyres now to do another lap. So as the checkered flag drops in this next part of qualifying, it's Piastri fastest by 2/10 to Charles Leclerc. Hayes, our teammate, he's definitely showing this pace in this car. He's third, 3/10 behind. And knocked out in qualifying 2 is Alex Albon, Isaac Hadjar, myself, Carlos Sainz, Gabriel Bortoleto, and Liam Lawson as we now head to Grand Prix.
This race has gone by several former names: the Italian Grand Prix, the San Marino Grand Prix, and now the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix. It's race day. We're at Imola. Welcome. One lap of Imola, anti-clockwise of course, unlike most Formula One circuits, will take our drivers round 3.1 miles of track, 19 turns, 9 right-handers and 10 to the left. Drivers will need to be precise at the hairpin at turn 7, given the subsequent uphill section. Without a good exit from that corner, they'll lose a lot of time on that stretch. Off the back of a fantastic qualifying session, it's time to see how our starting grid looks like for today's race. Max Verstappen put in a fantastic lap yesterday, and he'll start from pole position. And Lando Norris lines up alongside. Looking down the rest of the grid, we have Tsunoda, Leclerc, Oscar Piastri, and Hamilton. Hayes, Russell, Fernando Alonso, and Pierre Gasly. Albon, Hadjar, Joshua Pearce, and Sainz. Bortoletto, Lawson, Andrea Kimi Antonelli, and Nico Hülkenberg. Ocon, Behrman, Stroll, and Jack Doohan rounds off the grid. And with lights out just moments away, it's time to go down to the track. And alongside me today, a man who I'm always pleased to see join me in the commentary box, Anthony Davidson. Look, we know it's not where you start, it's where you finish. But let's talk about the start now. What's there to help the drivers get away well?
Big pressure at the start of the race, Crofty, for all of them up and down the grid, no matter where you are. But the drivers these days, they practice, practice and practice. They have rigs with them at the circuit where they can sit down with the actual steering wheel from the real car, and they've got lights that they react to. The clutch paddle is tailored around the driver's hands, around their fingers, so they can have optimum position before they start. So there's so much thought and effort that goes into getting these cars off the line.
Okay, radio check, radio check. Okay, here we go. I know what you can do. Don't let me down.
A little bit of motivation and a reminder that we can get ourselves through the field. We've done it before, but today it might just be that a little bit more difficult. We're going to stick with the default strategy, going onto the medium tyres to start off with lap 14 and boxing for the hards. As now we're on the grid and we're waiting for the drop of the 5 red lights, and we're away for the Grand Prix here in Imola, and it's a pretty good start for ourselves. We try to go around the outside of Alex Albon and we'll turn to the inside, but in the end we don't have the straight line speed against that Williams, and we send it down the inside and surprise ourselves out a little bit there as we go down the inside of Isaac Hadjar as well. But unfortunately he'll get the better traction on us and he will pull away into P11. We'll slot into P12 just behind, as further up the field they're already going single file with how difficult it is to go side by side through these sections and these corners here in Imola, as we go for a very late move on Isaac Hadjar to try and get that P11 back. I want to try and make up as many positions as I can in the first couple of laps here before the field spreads out a little bit, but going for that move that you can see, it's created such a large gap to Fernando Alonso in P10. It's already over a second, so we probably haven't played our cards quite right there with that battle. But further up the front now, as they go onto lap 2 of the Grand Prix, Oscar Piastri is not waiting any time, not waiting for the DRS to become activated, and he'll try and get himself now up into P3. He'll have to go down the inside of Tsunoda there in the second Red Bull, and he will not be able to get the position done, so he'll have to now wait until the DRS is activated for ourselves. So we are now trying to defend Gabriel Bortoletto. We ended up having to let Isaac Hadjar go through, so he's back up into P11, and now I think we're just trying to hold position and wait for the pit stop window to see if we can't make anything happen, as Piastri now finally gets himself in front of Yuki Tsunoda, but this time aided with the DRS. And our teammate is currently still sitting up in P5, so he's doing really well. So he's well and truly outperforming the car, being the best of the rest. But now, maybe it's time for him to start slowly dropping through the field a little bit as we squeeze Bortoletto all the way up to the grass, and it's a very fine defense from ourselves to keep the P12 position. But as I was saying, Hayes doing really well. He's now in P6, and he's looking to try and re-overtake the Ferrari at their home Grand Prix. Well, one of their home Grand Prix. Remember, 2 races this season in Italy. We'll also be heading down to Monza for the Temple of Speed. But yeah, our teammate Hayes, he's all the way up into P5, defending quite well from the two Ferraris in P6, P7. Ourselves also on the defense there, trying to make sure that we keep Bortoletto behind. But Alex Albon has now got themselves past Gabriel there, and so the Williams may be a little bit more difficult to defend from than the Sauber, as Hamilton now gets himself repassed ahead of Sonny Hayes, and so our teammate drops back one position. And as I was saying, the Williams is a bit more difficult to defend from. He'll blast past us in the DRS zone, and we'll just have to try now sit for P13, see if we can't continue this defense against Gabriel Bortoletto in P14 as we get our first objective of the Grand Prix, which is to, as I've been saying, keep Gabriel behind. If we get stuck behind a Sauber, it could prove costly, very costly for our strategy. They're definitely going to be slower than us, and everyone else in front of us is probably going to be either on pace or a bit quicker than us. So if we can try and stay with them, that will be really good for our races. Gasly gets himself now ahead of Fernando Alonso there, and on board with ourselves now, going through the fast section of the circuit up in Sector 2, and we have caused an absolute massive pile up. We got it onto the gravel, and that's going to be our first red flag of the series with the pile up that we've caused. I made a very costly mistake there, just ran wide. I'm pushing really hard to try and close the gap to the cars in front of us. I get on the gravel and I try to keep in it to try and not lose as much momentum, and in the end spinning back across the circuit and ending so many races. Bortoletto, man, was he close, and behind, carnage continues. Alex Albon now. How badly was Alex involved here? Oh, he caught the tail end of our car as we were spinning back across the circuit. So Alex Albon out of the race. How about Liam Lawson? We're just going to go through here and see how bad and what kind of condition each of their cars are in. So it looks like Lawson probably picked up a bit of damage there, a bit of front wing damage. Kimi Antonelli in his home Grand Prix is out of the race. Nico Hulkenberg will also lose a front wing. He'll rear-ended there. I think that was Oliver Behrman that he ended up rear-ending. Now Lance Stroll, he managed to get it slowed down, but also got rear-ended. I'm guessing it's going to be Jack Doohan who rear-ends him, and now Doohan is also out of the race. Here is Behrman, and so it was actually the other Haas there of Ocon that it would have been that I mentioned before, but now we'll take a look at an updated strategy for the restart of the Grand Prix. We'll still be on a set of mediums and still stop for a hard set of tyres, so we still have to make a pit stop here. We're not going to be able to go to the end with how early this red flag has come out, but we're underway for the second time here today in Imola. It's another alright start for ourselves. We get ourselves ahead of Bortoletto off of the race start, but that straight line speed has these yellow flags ahead. What on earth has happened for there to be yellow flags already, as now we look to the outside of Isaac Hadjar, and that was Oscar Piastri off the road at turn 3 there, and we've now got an illegal overtake as Hadjar kind of pulled up a little bit more than I was expecting. We made contact with Stroll, and that has unsettled the car, and now we're off into the gravel as the virtual safety car is now deployed. So that is all kicked off here on the restart, the second race start of today. Let's take a look here and try and work out what's happened to Oscar Piastri. And so this is one of the championship favourites. They cannot afford to have any DNFs, but the top 3 in the championship have now all had a DNF. Verstappen has had a DNF in Japan. Norris has had an engine failure in Bahrain, and now Oscar Piastri will find himself also with a non-finish, and he's done very well there to pull it off the racetrack and find a gap in the wall super quickly, hence the virtual safety car. But we'll take an order check here now after the stoppage and after this virtual safety car. So Lando Norris leads the way ahead of Yuki Tsunoda and Max Verstappen rounding off the podium, 2 bulls on the podium, and then it is Sonny Hayes in P4, our teammate, doing very well. The 2 Ferraris, Hamilton ahead of Leclerc, then it's George Russell, Alonso, Gasly and Albon rounding out the points, then it's Bortoletto, Hadjar, Stroll, Hulkenberg, Lawson, Behrman and ourselves in P17. We're going to need to try and recover from this stoppage, as now we're underway once again for this Grand Prix. We tried to be a bit smart there with the timing of the green flag, and unfortunately I didn't get it quite right. We had like 6/10 left on our delta, so we didn't quite close up as much as we should have to the back of Oliver Behrman. So we will have a little bit of work cut out for ourselves now, as Max Verstappen's looking to dispatch his teammate quite quickly, and he'll get himself now up into P2, heading into the first braking zone of the lap. As now back on board with ourselves, we've got ourselves our next objective of the Grand Prix, and we need to set a nice quick lap time because we have lost touch to all of them, and these medium tyres, for whatever reason, just aren't feeling it. Or maybe with going through the gravel there, I've picked up quite a bit of damage, and maybe underfloor damage, because our underfloor has definitely been the first thing to break on our car so far this season, and it is proving to be quite fragile, but we still managed to achieve a nice quick lap time. We're about 2 seconds ahead of the delta that they set us, and so the pace is there from what Mark is trying to get us to do. So there's definitely pace from us at the moment, but it's just not enough pace for us to keep up with the main pack. As now back towards the front of the field, our teammate trying to defend from Hamilton. He shuts the door on the inside, but Hamilton swings it around the outside, and is he going to be able to get P4? He will be able to get 4th position away from our teammate. Albon gets himself ahead of Pierre Gasly. They'll continue to go side by side, but it's actually Gasly that's going to be getting ahead of Alex Albon, as now we go to the next lap, and it's going to be our teammate Hayes looking to use the DRS to great effect here, and to try and get himself back ahead of Lewis Hamilton for P4. Could there possibly be a podium on the cards from our teammate Sonny Hayes here today in Imola, if he plays his strategy right, if he's got the pace to catch up to the back of Yuki Tsunoda? But he's going to have to deal with the 7-time world champion Lewis Hamilton, who sweeps around the outside to take that position back, and the other Ferrari of Leclerc is battling it out with George Russell, but Russell is going to get the better of the Ferrari and get himself now up into 6th position, and that is going to be now Leclerc down to P7, but the battle is not over between Hayes and Hamilton. Hayes will now find himself up into P4, Hamilton down to P5. Alonso now finds himself ahead of Charles Leclerc, so Leclerc dropping rapidly down the field now and finds himself into P8 as Stroll gets it all crossed up on the exit there, and he finds himself into the barrier. And let's take a look on board of what happened there, as the camera angle that they gave us for the TV cam there wasn't really showing us what happened, and he just picked up the throttle and just found himself in the Crypto.com wall, and that is him with front wing damage, and I would imagine probably a pit stop as well to try and repair that damage, but by the looks of it, based off his delta, I think he has stayed out. The damage not big enough, or not going to cost him enough time to warrant an extra stop down the pit lane, as Leclerc and Alonso continue to battle it out. But behind, there's a bigger battle for the final points paying position between Lawson and Gasly. Lawson, though, currently in that 10th position, as now the battle for the lead of the Grand Prix here. Verstappen, he'll use the DRS to get himself ahead of Lando Norris and finds himself leading the Imola Grand Prix, a position that he's found himself so accustomed to here in Imola, is leading the Grand Prix 1 the last few years, and Charles Leclerc now finds himself up into P7, gaining a little bit of time back towards his teammate, who finds himself up into P4, so that's just how far Leclerc has fallen off the pace here, as Gasly now gets himself up into P9 by pulling off a double around the outside overtake. A brilliant move there from Pierre Gasly, as now we come in for our pit stop to get ourselves onto the hard tyre. This will actually tick off the rule that we have to run the 2 compounds, so doing this is pretty much necessary. But I would also imagine, based off some of the tyres that I've seen some of the AI being running, that a lot of the other guys will also be coming in as well. It's a good pit stop, 2.4 seconds, but we're going to be coming out of the pits in P17. That's last on the road despite all of the DNFs, as now the race leader Max Verstappen will pull into the lane, and after just those few laps he's had in the lead, he has pulled off some mega in-laps here. 3 seconds was the lead coming into the lane. He'll pull in and he'll go from a set of hard tyres to another set of hard tyres, so definitely trying to go to the end here with 11 laps to go. Yuki Tsunoda, though, he is also trying to make up some ground. He'll find himself ahead of Lewis Hamilton up into P3 now, so could we see for the first time this season a double Red Bull podium? Well, at least off the top of my head, I'm pretty sure it's going to be the first time this season we'll see both the Red Bulls on the podium. At least so far, one of them have been on the podium for nearly every round. Again, off the top of my head, the Red Bull's been very dominant so far this season, on board with ourselves now, pushing really hard to try and get ourselves further up the field, but we've made the same mistake for a second time, but this time it is a race ender as we find the barrier, and it's been a day. Wow, what a way to end.
And in the end, there was no Verstappen. Max Verstappen, he takes victory.
And of course, that's now 4 race wins in a row. They've got the momentum now, and it's starting to turn into a bit of a dominance.
And once all the hard work is over, and after lap of brilliant racing, it's time now to celebrate with our podium trio. One of the all-time greats celebrates yet again. It's another podium, it's another top step for Max Verstappen.
So Max Verstappen has taken his 4th straight win this season and is on absolute fine form, turning his championship around after a little bit of a shaky start to the season. Norris takes something positive out of the weekend for McLaren after Piastri's DNF with a podium finish, and Tsunoda will make it a double podium for Red Bull. And it was just another terrible weekend for myself. Had some pace in quali, but when it came to the race, it all went out the window and had the spin, which resulted in the red flag. Then another spin at the same corner, which ended our race. The rest of the top 10, though, Lewis Hamilton, our teammate Sonny Hayes, in the end, finishing very well in P5, claiming some very, very good points for the team. George Russell, Alonso, Albon, Lawson, and Pierre Gasly round out the points, and a lot of non-finishers, including Charles Leclerc, who DNF'd after us, and so that would have been interesting to see how he managed to do that. Myself, also a non-finisher, Piastri, Sainz, Antonelli, Ocon, and Doohan not finishing the Grand Prix as well. Verstappen will extend his championship lead to 32 points ahead of Lando. Then Piastri finds himself third, 68 points behind, now losing a little bit of touch to the championship lead after not scoring any points today. Myself in 8th, 12 points behind Leclerc, and Hayes now into P11, 8 points behind Pierre Gasly. Red Bull lead the Constructors' Championship by 24 points to McLaren. Ferrari find themselves in 3rd, 85 points behind. APXGP, we're in now P5, 7 points behind Mercedes. And our driver ratings, our experience has lost some points. Awareness, Racecraft, Pace gained some points, while our Focus has taken quite the hit down to level 79 for an overall rating of 83. And our driver recognition does remain at 55% despite everything that went on. I'm very thankful that has happened, and now we find ourselves hopefully with a bit of good news, because we're going back to another circuit where I'm quite comfortable at. Monaco is usually a pretty good circuit for me, so hopefully we can turn things around in the Principality at the Monaco Grand Prix. So if you did enjoy this episode, please make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you for the next one.